It's time for the WCW Monday Nitro main event of the evening.
This is where the big boys play, huh? Look at the adjective, play. We ain't here to play.
But as Donald Trump hangs onto the top of the Trump Plaza with his family under his other arm as they sink to the bottom of the sea. Thank God Donald Trump's a Hulkamaniac.
Inside cradle to DCO! Yeah! A new heavyweight champion of the world has been crowned! Sting has upset Ric Flair!
I want everybody in here to take a good long look at this crap I'm in. Oh, my new name is Seven, by the way, so they've dressed me up like Uncle Fester.
And I don't mind telling you, I was wearing these $600 custom-made lizard shoes and this $13,000 Rolex.
You are listening to the Main Event Wrestling Podcast, and this week, Clint Schweitzer alongside Noah Groniger, we're going to be joined by none other than one half of one of the greatest tag teams in pro wrestling history. Yes, Ricky Morton from the Rock and Roll Express going to be joining us. He had just had a bit of a medical emergency. He had was stricken with Bell's palsy, so he was kind of in and out of the doctor. So we were able to just work in just a few questions with him, and it was a pleasure to do so because we are taking you back to the NWA, back to the glory days when the tag team division was as red hot as it's ever been in the business. I'm talking about guys like the Russians, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, the Midnight Express, all the great feuds. Man, there were some memories from back in the day with the Rock and Roll Express, one of the hottest, one of the most popular tag teams of all time, Noah. Going to be joined by Ricky Morton here. It's going to really take us back to the glory days of the National Wrestling Alliance and Jim Crockett Promotions.
Yeah, we've said it a few times here. This is a little bit before my time period of getting into wrestling, but I've seen the archive footage. You've shown me Night of the Skywalkers, their scaffold match between them and the Midnight Express, and it is just unbelievable. I mean, I thought I knew tag teams with just Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors, and the Outsiders and Harlem Heat, and there is just this vast library of great tag teams, and it starts and ends pretty much right here with the Rock and Roll Express.
It does, and I think Jim Ross said it best before they got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame back in 2017, that there's no, I don't think that the chemistry between Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton were unparalleled. They were innovators. They've done things that no one had ever seen before, and they were the perfect white meat baby faces. They were as popular. They were in main events. You'd have Ric Flair in a world title match, and you'd have the Rock and Roll Express in the Midnights or the Russians that would be also, part of those main events, back then. And so I think it was Hacksaw Jim Duggan that pointed out there's no Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, the Rockers, without the Rock and Roll Express. I mean, it's almost a direct ripoff of that gimmick that they had. They were so popular in the South. The women loved them. Jim Cornette said the Rock and Roll Express had more sex on the way to the ring than most people would have in their lives. And famous feud with Ric Flair. Ricky Morton was kind of built up as the perfect babyface to take on Ric Flair back in 1986. And I think it was Ric Flair that started the feud by throwing a training bra at Ricky Morton, saying he couldn't handle a real woman like the Nature Boy. So legendary stuff, legendary feuds. We're going to get into a little of it. We had to cut it a little short because Ricky was kind of in and out of a doctor's appointment. So it's just great to do this. Here on the Main Event Podcast, we had Gary Michael Capetta on last week. We're going to be delving into some of the interviews we've done in years past, as well. Kurt Angle, guys like Mick Foley. We've done Alex Wright, Scotty Riggs, Mark Marrow, and Lanny Poffo. Lots of great interviews that we've done. We're going to continue to bring them to you here on the Main Event Wrestling Podcast, Noah. So with that said, I just kind of want to, before we bring on Ricky Morton, because this time period is so important to me, I've been a wrestling fan since I was 3 or 4 years old, 1988 or so. And I didn't quite understand the distinction between WWF and the NWA or WCW once it was finally bought out by Turner in the late 80s. But I knew I loved this business. I knew I loved what it was about. I loved the characters. I loved the athleticism, the competition, and the storylines. But when you kind of take a step back, someone that came in in the mid-90s, when you take a step back and kind of see the footage of this stuff, what do you think of wrestling in the kind of late 80s through early 90s?
just the pop of the crowd and the larger than life figures. I mean, you look at the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express, Arn and Tully, the Russians, and just kind of the spectacle and show and different things they were trying. We mentioned the Night of the Skywalkers, the scaffold match, just seeing that. I couldn't believe my eyes. This is allowed. They're actually having these guys up here. Like, what if something goes wrong? I can't believe these guys would agree to it. Just the love of the business and willing to do whatever it is to put on a great show. And that's what kind of the 80s meant to me. The 90s was just more like the Attitude Era in WWE and more a shock and awe. And back then you felt like the love of the business. And these guys live, breathe, and eat this stuff. And in the 90s, when I kind of got into it, the mid 90s, it was more towards the storylines and the money side of the business and not really the love of it, which you really felt back then.
Yeah, you did, and you just look at these arenas. I mean, Jim Crockett Promotions was really running neck and neck. I mean, there was a certain point in time when, really before Hulkamania, before things like that, Jim Crockett Promotions in the Mid-Atlantic area was absolutely so red hot with some of the talent they had, and they continued to have those players on into the late '80s, early '90s. Now, WWE had far surpassed them in popularity by then, and I think the key to that is the NWA territory was all about the matches, the in-ring, and the athleticism. The production values were low, the arenas were dimly lit, and it was all about that energy inside the ring. And if you go back and watch some of the early Starcades, the Greensboro Coliseum was just so over the top, hot. It almost felt like the roof was going to blow off those places when you brought in some of these tag teams, some of these wrestlers. I mean, you had Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes. I remember at Starcade 85 and just that whole build up of that. Then at 86, the Night of the Skywalkers, Starcade 87, the Midnights and the Rock and Roll Express. The energy inside the ring was unbelievable. But in WWE, it was marketed more towards children, which I think the demographic became, it just became more easily digestible by the casual fan that were catching on to WrestleMania, catching on to Hulkamania, catching on to some of the gimmicks that were going on, guys out there like, Ravishing Rick Rude, the Macho Man, it was all larger than life figures. They had that in the NWA too, but it was more about the in-ring work. So you kind of had something for everyone back then. And I miss that about wrestling. I think now we have it maybe for the first time in almost 18 years because you've got the AEW and you've got WWE. Do you ever foresee that we could get wrestling back to the way it was, not just in the 90s Monday Night Wars, but how about in the late 80s when you had this kind of competition? Is the business really cyclical enough to handle that?
I mean, I don't see it. I know there's people on opposite sides of the fence, and we'll ask Ricky this coming up, what he sees for the business heading into the future. He was on AEW recently, and so, but as far as me, like, I don't see it ever coming back to that. It had its time, and there's been too many lean and down years that it would take almost a miracle in my eyes for it to come back and pop like it was even in the 80s and the 90s. And I just don't foresee that happening. There's too many other options. There's wrestling just seems to have fallen by the wayside, and I just don't know if you can recapture that.
Well, we're going to get Ricky Morton's thoughts on all this. It's our pleasure to welcome to the Main Event Podcast one half of one of the great tag teams in the history of professional wrestling, Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express. Ricky, welcome to the show, man. How's everything going?
Oh man, last week I was going to the gym. I got up that morning and drank some coffee, and when I took a drink, coffee just come out the side of my mouth. I thought I was having a stroke.
Wow.
But my wife rushed me to the emergency room, and when I got there, they ran all the tests on me and everything, and I had a touch of Bell palsy. But now, under my doctor's care and taking my medication and some good prayers from all the fans, starting to heal up, buddy. It's starting to go away.
Well, glad to hear that. I know that's affected people like Jim Ross, for years. And so it's something that, I didn't know if it came and went and kind of how it would work, if there was lasting effects. So hopefully you're on the mend.
I still got just a little bit of it. You know what it is, the left side of my face. When it first happened, I couldn't even shut my eye. But now all that, I can wink now and shut it. And, I'm not sleeping. I had to put an eye patch over my But it's different things that they said it's brought on by stress, but I don't know. but but now I'm getting a lot better, dude. And boy, and for me, I tell you what, I'm looking forward to. I'm looking forward to our business to crank back up, man.
Yeah.
We that was one of my things, and which is pretty good because now you can't tell. So, but the business is, this is what we do for a living, and a bunch of us. And gosh, man, especially during the WrestleMania week down
Yes.
in Tampa, and we had a bunch of Comic-Cons up in New York City and everything. It's a really a big football kick to the butt. But
Yeah.
other than that, everything's good.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are independent contractors. Of course, Raw has been going to the empty arena. So is AEW, and then also SmackDown, of course, in WrestleMania 2 nights in the Performance Center. It's going to be really strange. People like you that do a lot of independent bookings. I mean, this is just for not only just wrestlers, but musicians and art people that are independent contractors. It's a tough time for 'em. We just hope it ends sooner than later.
Yeah, me too. It's just all in entertainment. All your entertainers, all that stuff is closed. The Broadway shows are closed. Everything. And if you get a chance, guys, who's listening, I have a show.
Yes.
It comes on YouTube, on School of Morton, Facebook. It comes on at 5:05 every Sunday. That's Eastern time.
Yep.
But it's my wrestling school. I have a lot of matches from there. I won't be there this weekend, but I have some tapes that I play. We did a show. We did 2 shows last weekend with no crowd, just like everybody else did. Only people that were there were the guys that were wrestling, and they're the ones that sat in the crowd. So, but it worked out real good. So if anybody out there who get a chance, check that out. It's on School of Morton. It's YouTube off of that. Then you can catch me on Facebook, Real Ricky Morton. And then Instagram, the Babyface Ricky Morton. And then Ricky Morton. How's that?
Hey, that covers it all. And I'm telling you, I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I was just listening to the one you did last week, the School of Morton. You can also get that. Yeah, it's great. Great stuff, man.
Yeah, I got David on there this coming up one. So, man, this is a real kick. But when we just did it yesterday, and I think it's going to be one of my best I've done. So thank you, man. Yeah, listen to me on the School of Morton podcast. It's really cool. Me and Scotty Campbell, which Scotty's real big here in the Bristol, Tennessee area. He has a new show every morning, and he's into politics, and he can tell you what all goes in there. But boy, he's a big wrestling fan, and he sure does help me out a lot.
That's great, and we'll definitely send people over there to listen to that. But Ricky, you and Robert were part of the Crockett Cup just last year, and were recently seen on AEW. So I kind of wanted to ask you and get your thoughts on wrestling today, and if you think that AEW or maybe even the NWA can really kind of gain a foothold and become a force in wrestling.
Well, man, I'm glad you asked. That's a good question. Because and please listen to me. I don't have the answers to everything, but I do. Robert and I are going on, almost 40 years. So there'll be 4 decades that we're working home being tag team partners. But I've been in the business for 46 years. At a time that when I'm 63 years old, especially this last year, has been one of my better years. And listen to me, ever in the business.
Wow.
Had a good thing for Crockett in NWA days, and this is what I want to say. When you bring NWA back, and you've got people that's in the office there, and it's even at my wrestling school when I train people. Before I can train you, I have got to make you understand what our business is about. It's not about me. It's not about you. It's about a business. And see, one thing I like about NWA is they have everybody there working together. You see, and to be successful, you've got to have everybody working together. Great matches. They have some of the greatest talent there that I've, been around, because you see, sometimes it ain't what you do in the ring, it's what you don't do. And they have a bunch of people there like that. And AEW, man, I can't thank that organization enough for bringing Robert and I on TV. Now, when you get exposure like that on national TV, and from the Young Bucks being on their show, and all the Elite and all this stuff, I mean, God, it's up, but we're still out here. I'm not, and listen to me, I'm not trying to be somebody I'm not.
Yeah.
But this is what I do for a living. And as long as I can entertain and give the people their money's worth, it's the only thing I know. I mean, it's hard when you do this I'm not a brain surgeon. I don't know. Only thing I know is professional wrestling. I love all the promotions, and I'm just telling you this. I love it. I love being a part of NWA because it brings back the old memories. It brings back the old school professional wrestling, and it's in WWE and NXT. This is a blossomed billion-dollar business, so I really like it. It's a lot of things that's going on. It's me. It's time for me, and I want to get into the production part of the business. I want to be an agent because, man, in the back of my mind, all you need is that one chance. It's all I do is eat, sleep, and drink wrestling. I got a lot of ideas, but boy, I'm saving them for the right time and right place, and I can't wait to do that because I'm going to prove to the wrestling world that people still believe. No matter what you think, they still believe. And I have some ideas, I think, that will really spark our business back again.
That's awesome.
Well, that's tremendous.
Good.
And someone that's a big believer in you and the work you've done is Arn Anderson. I don't know if you heard on his latest podcast called Arn. He talked about you and Ricky, you and Robert, the Rock and Roll Express being on the Mount Rushmore of tag teams. What does that mean coming from him? You guys had some classic battles with not only Arn and Ole, but certainly Arn and Tully as well. What does that mean coming from a guy like Arn, putting you on that Mount Rushmore of tag teams?
Well, but, we're coming from somebody like Arn, because Arn was one of the greatest tag teams. Not only with him and Tully or him and Ole, or it was him and Flair and, the Four Horsemen, this whole thing. It's the world to me to get a compliment from Arn. But you see, in our days, Arn, it is not the part that I stuck out. I'm Ricky Morton. I stood for Ricky Morton. I deal with, but Arn knows me. Arn knows how hard I worked in the ring and my passion for this business. And that's the reason we drew money, because I'm getting back to what I just told you. I'm like a ball bouncing around here. Just to making people understand and believe in what you do. And that's great. Arn's, I don't got to say nothing about Arn. Everybody knows how great he is, great psychology in the ring. And it's a great compliment, man. Hey, I hate to cut you off here, fella. I just come in. I've been running around like a chicken. I had to go to the doctor today and get released, and I had to go do this. But, everybody's confined in the house, and I'm here with my wife. I took my hearing aid out earlier. And I'm just kidding. But she I could hear her holler. No, guys, thank you. It's a great honor to be on your show. And I hope that you can bring me back on when we have a little time and you can ask me some great questions. And don't forget, man, to check me out every Sunday, 5:05 on YouTube, School of Morton, Babyface Ricky Morton Instagram, and Ricky Morton regular Facebook. Guys, to all my wrestling fans out there that are listening, stay safe, be cool, and if the music's too loud, you're too damn old.
Well, there you had it. We had to cut off early there with Ricky Morton. He had to give us the hot tag. So I guess we're going in the ring now and going to have to make this giant comeback and clean house just like his partner Robert Gibson used to do and still does with the Rock and Roll Express. But thanks to Ricky for doing that. Definitely check out his podcast, The School of Morton. It's great stuff, great stories from back then. You enjoy topics like this, topics like we talked about, just the Mount Rushmore of tag teams that Arn Anderson put him on, talking about working against guys like Tully and Arn, that he's got it on that. So great stuff. We want to definitely make sure you subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify. Any way you choose to take in podcasts, we've got your back covered. Noah, going forward on this, I mean, we've been watching a lot of WWE Network. We're all sequestered to our homes. And, we want to maybe start throwing out some topics for our fans, and to see what you guys want us to cover next, because not only are we going to be going after great guests, but we're going to go delving into some of these events, old pay-per-views, events, things like that, wrestlers, moments that shaped wrestling. What comes to mind to you? Like, I know you've been watching a lot of WWE Network. What comes to mind? What events do you want to cover coming up? And maybe what are some ways we want to get these out maybe and have some fans vote on some of this stuff? That'd be cool.
Oh, absolutely. I know for me, I just kind of want to go back, and it's been so long. You watch these Nitros for me in WCW growing up, and they're just kind of lost forever. I mean, I might have some VHS tapes with some episodes still on there, but they've been kind of lost. And now with WWE Network, and they're all on there, I mean, I'd almost like to go back and relive that whole just era of the NWO coming in and the forming, and just 97 Starrcade was Sting, and kind of where the storyline died, and they kept it going for far too long, and the finger poke of doom, and just kind of relive all that. So for me, that's kind of something, if anyone has an idea, specific moment or time, whether it's 97 Starrcade, the finger poke of doom, Sting and Luger joining the Wolfpack, and just how they broke up into NWO Hollywood and NWO Wolfpack, just all of that for me.
Excellent. Can't wait to do it. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Main Event Podcast. We will be back at you with another unknown topic next week. Can't wait to cover it. Can't wait to continue interacting with some of these great fans. You can go to our website, ignitroentertainment.com, where you can get all the updates. All of our podcasts are there. That's where all of our entertainment, all of our stuff is really archived there. We do retro movie reviews, nostalgia, of course, wrestling, music. It's all kind of under that umbrella, ignitroentertainment.com. So go check it out. And you can give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Ignitro Entertainment. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Main Event Podcast.